Oh shit!
In Ecuador, it's like you plan something knowing that something's gonna go wrong and you just go with it. Like,
You're flexible.
you're flexible, yeah. Because something will always go wrong.
A few weeks ago, two of my best friends from the States, Sophia and Peter, came to visit me in Ecuador for 7 days. Sophia and Peter are like my best friends, so I wanted to plan the perfect trip for them. And you and I both know that the most memorable adventures are never just the ones you find online or with a tourism agency, and they're usually never just in the city center. So before they came, I asked everyone I knew in Ecuador, what is the best way to spend 7 days around Quito, Ecuador? And this is what we came up with. And this is what actually happened.
Keep touching hands in the back.
What's happening back here?
I tried surprising Sophia and Peter at the airport, but they spotted me right away. They bought a round-trip flight out of Washington, D.C. for about $400. But the inbound flight was an overnight red-eye, so they were a little tired. But energy was still high. Our first part of the trip was the most important part, picking up our rental car. What was your experience like driving here?
Honestly, it wasn't as bad as I was expecting.
Really?
When we were in the airport, Sophia was like, oh my god, it's gonna be like awful, you just have to send it. And I was like, okay, I don't think it's gonna be like too bad. And then when I got here, honestly, there were only like a couple hairy moments.
The rental car was about $80 a day, and you can use your American driver's license here. But since the driving here is a bit lawless and hectic, we got the insurance too. Sarah from Hertz actually ended up subscribing to my channel too, probably just to keep tabs in the car. Our first destination was the town of Mindo, a super fun but a little less known tourist hub about an hour and a half outside of Quito. The drive to Mindo is a bit sketchy to say the least. Mindo sits in a cloud forest, so it gets foggy and hazy as you get closer. So make sure you leave well before sunset. And make sure you download the directions ahead of time because you often lose service as you get closer. We were having lots of fun on the drive until it started raining, we hit a pothole, and Sophia genuinely got scared.
No, it was before the big pothole, and I was like this because you guys were singing and dancing and like felt like not really paying attention to like what was happening. And next thing I know, you guys hit this huge pothole. You guys go silent, and I was like, thank you.
But we made it. And we stayed at a lodge one of my friends recommended called Terra Bamboo. The lodge is authentic, spacious, and cute. Has a jacuzzi and balcony, and access to a shared pool, free zip lining, and bungee jumping, along with really good free breakfast every morning. We ate dinner at the lodge and then just chilled for the night since we had an early and big day tomorrow. The lodge is really cool, but I will say Peter and I found a lot of bugs that we had to exterminate.
Mindo was a lot of fun.
I was-
The whole day.
Of course, if I was.
Yeah, exactly.
One of my local friends recommended a guide for us to use in Mindo. The guide service offered every fun activity: zip lining, bungee jumping, rafting, cable cars to the waterfalls, all for just $27 per person, which we thought was pretty cheap and just made coordinating everything a lot easier. But when we got to the meetup location, something just didn't feel right. The meetup location mapped us to some deserted concrete building under construction in the middle of nowhere. But then we saw this man standing under a small hut in the corner. And apparently he was our guide, Luis. His hut, his
No, it was like a pop-up.
yeah, it was like a
Next to a
pop-up.
construction site.
Is this it? Is this the place where you're like our tourism agency? Like, hey, I was like, yeah, you messaged me? He's like, yeah. I'm like, okay. It seemed strange just because, living in the US, you're so used to every tourism agency having a fancy logo, a nice building, matching company t-shirts. But we asked about the activity package, decided to send it, and paid for it. Then he literally gave us a paper ticket and a map and told us where to go for each activity. And that was it. So we drove off looking for the first activity. Honestly, probably thinking that we got scammed. But we managed to find the first ziplining spot with lots of people there. And guess who we saw? Luis! Luis! Good to see you again. Once we knew this wasn't a scam, we let loose and had an amazing day doing all the activities Luis had planned for us. Ziplining along 10 different cables through the Mindo cloud forest, jumping off a kinda sketchy bungee swing rafting down the Mindo River on 4 tubes duct taped together with our guide steering with his feet. And not to mention, the rapids of the Mindo River are way bigger than you would expect. And taking the cable car through the cloud forest and hiking to 4 super cool waterfalls.
I think my favorite was the rafting, just because I was literally laughing the entire time and watching you try to film and holding on with one hand. And then the guy not even using an oar and using his foot to bring us along was just absolutely hilarious.
And the best part was, Sophia and I don't speak Spanish, and Eddie does. And he explains everything to us. And we're like,
Is it preguntas?
he's like, preguntas, any questions? And he said, no. And we're like, what did he say? And we're just like, all right, just hold on and put your feet here. And then the whole time Eddie's just
I'm on my phone.
And when he got flipped over on one of the rapids.
You got flipped?
Yeah,
My phone is like this.
the guy was just
Did your
laughing.
phone get wet?
Oh yeah. It's like in splash.
Using Luis is awesome because you have so much independence. We did everything on our own time, stopped back at Tarabambu when we needed to change and rest, stopped for lunch at this cute, authentic, unique restaurant called Las Tongas. They served authentic Ecuadorian food like tongas. Always make sure to ask locals for recommendations because we would have never found this place otherwise.
Louise and Mindo, like, just
right.
kind of rolling up and being like, hey, can we go rafting today? And like, still didn't even have a time we were going to raft. It was just like, at some point we're gonna be rafting with this guy.
That was pretty raw.
It was just cool, like the spontaneity of it all was really neat.
And the independence part of it too, right? Because like we like roll up to Luis and he's kind of like, all right, this is the schedule. Like go here, go here, go here, go here. And we're like, all right, like I guess. She's like, here's this little ticket that says that you can go do these things. I'm like, okay.
And we give one ticket to one guy, and then we get a new ticket to then go to the next one, to then take the ticket. It was just like fun.
That's his one. Who's Luis? Really, did we get scammed?
There's not too much to do at night, but we found this local karaoke bar and had a fun time singing and dancing with other tourists. Definitely bring mosquito repellent or wear pants and a long sleeve shirt because there are tons of mosquitoes in Mindo, and Sophia and I didn't stop itching our bites for the rest of the trip. We counted 108 bites between the both of us. There are 2 more must-dos in Mindo: the Butterfly Museum and the Chocolate Factory. We did both in the morning in about 2 to 3 hours, and they're pretty chill activities, so it's a good contrast from yesterday's craziness and a good way to start the day. Then we started our drive back to Cumbaya. On the way back, we stopped at Mitad del Mundo, or the middle of the world, which is basically where the equator is at latitude 0 in Ecuador. It's super touristy, but has some fun stores, cool picture spots, and is worth a quick stop since it's on the way back. We stopped by Cumbaya quickly to pick up 2 of our friends, Avery and Sierra. And then we drove about another hour or so to Llacta, which has a really cool hot springs resort. We actually stayed at a lodge called Mama Llacta, which is the cheaper sister lodge of Llacta and only a 5-minute walk away from the hot springs. We got settled in at Mama Llacta a little later than expected, around 9 p.m., and the hot springs close at 10 p.m. So we rushed over, but the guards actually wouldn't let us in after 9. Luckily, Avery and Sierra, both native Spanish speakers, were able to sweet talk and charm our way in. Do you think you could have gotten by on this trip without, like, just you two, like without a native speaker?
It definitely would have been difficult, but
I think we would have had to utilize like Google
Translate.
Translate and actually like have to sit there and be like typing in what I wanted to say and like doing it. But I feel like we defaulted to just being like, Eddie, Avery, can you please tell them what I want instead of having to. So, but definitely could have gone by.
Yeah, I think you.
Puedes hacer la mayoría de cosas sin saber español, but it's random moments like this when knowing the language makes all the difference.
Because when we were the first couple days when we were without a like native speaker, I was like, oh my god, we're screwed. We're screwed. And then we get there and Eddie starts talking up Sarah at Hertz. And I was like, wow, he's carrying a full conversation.
Sarah?
Sarah!
We relaxed in the hot springs, did a cold plunge competition, which I lost and Peter won, and snacked on some food back at Mama Llacta before heading to bed in our cozy little cabin.
Grab the body
Mama Llacta serves free breakfast in the morning too. And there's a super cool rooftop that has an amazing view of the mountain range. So we hung out up there, took some drone shots, and jammed to Sierra playing his latest song, La Sencillez. Next up, the famous Cotopaxi National Park. But first, we stopped by Cumbaya again to drop off Sierra and grab some groceries for our hike tomorrow. And apparently, the national park recently started closing the entrance at 3 p.m. to prevent people from going in too late. And like usual, we were running late. Everyone stayed quiet, but it was pretty obvious that we were all a little stressed and worried that they wouldn't let us in. And to add to the stress, on the way there, I kid you not, we literally almost died.
There were only like a couple hairy moments throughout the whole trip.
Like what?
Well, just like
Potholes.
yeah, the potholes.
I'm thinking of
That's
one.
gonna
Yeah,
go
I'm thinking
nowhere.
of one
I'm thinking
story
of
in
one
particular.
story.
The big story was the one where the guy's waving us down and Eddie's telling us to go around. And Peter's slowing down and we're like, no, like don't stop for him, don't stop for him, go around. And next thing we know, we finally do like completely stop. Another car whizzes by, and as soon as it whizzes by, just the billboard just falls into the middle of the road.
And then the guy just grabs it and drags it
And
off.
he
and
goes,
goes
oh
by.
great, thank you. And then just grabs it and goes off. And we were like, oh.
We thought we were about to get like carjacked, and Eddie's just like sideswiped him, go, go, go. But luckily we
Save your
stopped.
lives.
Yeah, he did save our
And he
lives.
saved our deposit on the rental car.
But anyways, after that crazy incident, we got to the Cotopaxi National Park entrance at 4 p.m., an hour past the deadline. But again, luckily Avery and her boyfriend Ganza, both Ecuadorian locals and native Spanish speakers, were able to sweet talk our way in. The silver lining to being late is that we got to our lodge called Cotopaxi right before sunset. The lodge has an amazing view of all the mountains in the park, so we walked around, took pictures, videos, flew the drone, and enjoyed the scenery and company before eating dinner at the lodge and winding down. If you're going to Cotopaxi, stay at Cotopaxi Lodge. It's cozy, spacious, staff is amazing, the food is great, and it's at the center of the Cotopaxi National Park.
I'm not gonna lie, the altitude is tough. It got
Especially for you.
It got me nutty, like at Tombo on the hike and tennis. I was gassed. When we were hiking, there were times I was like, I could just fall over. They're gonna keep walking, not even know for like 5, and I'm gonna be in the grass, and they're gonna be like, "Don't they have speeder?"
If there's one thing to take away from this video about visiting Quito, Ecuador, it is to prepare and be aware of altitude sickness. It's something that most Americans and Europeans have never had to deal with and are often unaware of. For some perspective, the city of Denver in the US sits at 5,000 feet high, and Quito sits at 9,000 feet high.
The altitude?
What would you do differently next time to try to, get acclimated better?
Just stay hydrated more.
You're not drinking enough this time?
I feel like I'm being pressed for a certain
No, you
answer.
can do
No,
it.
I'm
I
serious.
wanna know.
I'm seriously curious.
No, I think I did, but my body was just not retaining the water at its normal rate. I don't know if it's because of the altitude or what I ate, but definitely was.
Maybe like avoid dairy in the altitude.
Yeah.
I think that's what really upset your
Yeah.
stomach was like the heavy cream you ate.
It's not,
And so much food.
Yeah, it's like-
Yeah,
You did a lot of food.
I didn't listen to Avery's suggestion about maybe eating slower, not so much. I like cleaned my plate and
Yeah,
then
you
started
guys
like
were literally like-
cleaning everyone else's.
Toss the
The
kitchen.
food is good, yeah.
Long story short, Peter had some insane diarrhea that night and the next day during the hike. But one step at a time and one bathroom break at a time, we made it up 15,489 feet to the summit, higher than any point in the continental US and the highest all of us, except Avery, have ever been. I guess, do you guys have any other surprises? Only Peter went.
I saw you guys were gonna be a lot slower and
You guys.
feel it more. You guys have never been that high, so I thought you were gonna be a lot. Not in a bad way. You guys just really fast. It's like more out of breath and like having to stop more. Like having to like really like push you through it. And I was like, alright, here we go, and you guys just fell down.
Especially with Peter's diarrhea.
Yeah, you killed it, despite your condition.
And like falling 3 times. just on the mountain.
Stop it.
I want you to insert the picture of him
Yeah.
just like falling.
The live photo.
Yeah, like him just sitting there on the ground.
If you want to hike Ruminahui, and generally for most hikes in Ecuador, make sure you find and go with a guide or local friend, because the routes aren't as clear as you might expect, like you would find in the US. If you need help finding a guide, comment below and I can see who's around. We drove back to Cotopaxi to pick up our bags. Again, Cotopaxi staff is so nice. They told us to keep our things in the lodge to prevent thieves from breaking into our cars while we were hiking. Have you seen this ad on Airbnb? Well, that lodge is actually in Cotopaxi and we're staying there tonight. It's in a super remote area in the park, and the road to get there is basically like all loose rock. So the host arranged for a 4-wheel drive to drive us there. We basically drove to someone's house right outside of Cotopaxi, parked our car in his kind of garage, and jumped in the back of his truck and he drove us to the lodge. Again, things are just different here in Ecuador, something you would never see happen in the US.
I guess like the differences in culture,
Yeah.
right? Because like I didn't really feel like leaving our car with
Yeah.
Carlos. Like I wasn't like, oh no, something bad's gonna happen. I just knew he was being really nice and letting us leave our car there because we did it through Airbnb. You know what I mean? Like I never really felt like that, but I think you have to have that kind of level of like trust in where you're going.
But the Eco Lodge was amazing. We got settled in, hung out by the fire, each took showers, and then we all started cooking a big family dinner with the groceries that we brought. Except Peter. Peter got held up using the compostable toilet. While we waited for the chicken to cook on the grill outside, we did some group yoga where each of us led the group through a flow and some stretches. We laughed about funny moments from today and shared other crazy stories as we all ate dinner, not ever realizing we were all alone in the middle of nowhere, in the middle of the night. This moment felt pretty surreal. We almost didn't do Horseback, right?
Yeah.
I know.
Yeah, that was a good last minute call.
You were like, do you want to do
Yeah.
it or do you not? And I'm like,
We were all so
and they're like,
tired.
it's up to
You
you.
were like,
I was
sure.
I was kind of when I was hooked, I was like, I'm just saying different, but hoping she says no.
Yeah. No, I felt the same way. I was so tired.
I was
Honestly,
like-
from that day, I was like, I
I'm
couldn't even
like-
think about how to like get up and ride the horse.
The other amazing perk of the Eco Lodge Airbnb is that the host can arrange horseback riding through Cotopaxi even as late as the night before. Our guide dressed us in the typical clothing that Andean horseback riders would wear for an authentic experience. Then he guided us sightseeing through Cotopaxi National Park. We rode on all types of terrain, uphill, downhill, through rivers, and even got to jockey our own horse to gallop on our own near the very end, and we all felt very safe. The horses behaved really well. After, we packed up our things, rode with Carlos back to our cars, and drove back to Cumbaya to spend some time in the city before Sophia and Peter leave tomorrow morning. It's actually also Sophia's birthday tomorrow, so we went to a fancy restaurant tonight near Cumbaya Park called La Barria to celebrate and surprise her with a birthday cake and sang happy birthday. So, was this the perfect trip that I had planned? Kind of. It was perfect, weirdly, because it wasn't perfect. Things definitely didn't go entirely as planned. But those unexpected moments were the most memorable moments, the most adventurous moments, the moments where we learned the most about each other. We wanted an adventure, not just a vacation, which meant being okay entering a completely new culture, trusting strangers like Luis and Carlos, rafting Class 6 rapids in tubes, almost dying on the highway, suffering through altitude sickness, and then climbing to the highest point we've ever been. So was this the perfect trip? Yeah, I guess so, right?
Americans, like, they plan everything, and if something goes wrong, it's like the end of the world.
Yeah.
Like, everything goes to shit. Whereas in Ecuador, it's like you plan something knowing that something's gonna go wrong, and you just go with it. Like,
You're flexible.
you're flexible, yeah. Because something will always go wrong.
That's very true, very
Always.
true, very true.
But everyone anticipates it, so it's not a big deal.
The one thing I would do differently is planning like a more concrete lunch schedule, and not listening to the maybe plan when we're getting lunch.